take this for granted, Father. We don't take this for granted, Father, because it's your will that we come together, Father, that we go out into the world and make more and more disciples. So we thank you for this opportunity. Father, I'm praying that Riley paperwork and everything will go through and he will get what he wants. Father, I'm praying for anybody else on this call that's got any situation or prayer that need to be answered for his healing. I'm asking that you heal them. Father, I'm praying all the time and just asking you for financial help as we help our rabbi to go out and spread this word about what you have taught him, Father. So, Father, I'm praying for all our wives and all our loved ones on this call, that they will be okay, Father, today, and that they will be okay the rest of the week, Father, that you would bless us, watch over us, Father. Thank you for watching over us, Father. Thank you for this time we're going to get to spend together, Father. Open up our eyes and ears to hear the word that you want us to hear today. It's in the name of your son, Jesus. I ask you and thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Will. Casey, since you've been away and there's been a lot of time that we've spent away, it is time for you to step in and go.
All right.
It's all yours.
Okay. Well, again, man, I always love this time with you guys. And, man, I know we all need our downtime. I'm trying to be better at, man, what the old sage called, we say Sabbath, but the translation is simple rest. You know, how do we get some uninterrupted rest from different things, you know? And it's sometimes I think about resting my body, but it's more important to rest your mind, you know, put it on hold and allow it to not have to think and decide and make decisions. I was in a professional development class a couple of years ago, and I learned that, you know, fatigue happens with the number of decisions an individual has to make in a period of time. If you have a job that requires you to make multiple decisions, it's good for you to step away, you know, more often than not. So I appreciate our time off, but I value our time together. So thank you guys and look forward to it. All right. Now this next statement is gonna surprise some of you. But we did have some homework. We may or may not remember. It was just simply researching scriptures to find some passages in context with each of our topic or subtopics. Anybody remember our subtopics?
To find passages with, quote, with me time.
Yes, sir.
And to find passages becoming like or teaching about becoming like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. We'll open it up with the with me. Did anybody come across any passages that gives examples of with me time?
They're all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I got a couple that I've been looking at that I like, but I want to give someone else a chance to share any that they may have come up with.
Now, what are we look? We're doing passages of with me time.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
And then what else?
So the first one is the with me time. So the second one is doing what the rabbi does. Do we have any examples or passages show us examples of disciples doing what the rabbi does. And then the other one was teaching what the rabbi taught. Another one was being like the rabbi. And then the last one. Let's start with the with me time. Let's focus on that. So yeah. I know we were walking through Luke. We looked at a couple of other passages. But yeah. So yeah.
Well, there's that one. I don't know where that says he chose the 12 that they might be with him.
Okay. That's Mark 3:14. Let's go there.
Mark 3:14.
Yes, sir. Let's go there. And the passage doesn't have to say with me. It should model it. It should show it. You know, it should give an example of it. It doesn't necessarily have word. Go ahead.
Well, there were more passages about with me even before we get to Mark 3:14, in the fact that he told them to follow him, and they left their nets and they followed him, and they went and left their dad and to follow him. And then right after that, in about verse 19 of the first chapter of Mark, after that, in the New American Standard, it says they went, they did this, they went into another town. It was always in the plural from that moment on.
Yeah, it's pulling up my Discovery Bible is moving slow on me this morning. Let's go to Mark 3:14. This will set the tone and the focus.
That's actually with me time and them doing, and a verse that kind of talks about them doing what he does.
Yeah,
exactly. 2 and 1.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody read verses 13. And then we'll go all the way down to, I think verse 13 through 19.
Mark 3:13 through 19 in ASB. And he went up to the mountain and summoned those he himself wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 so that they would be with him, and he could send them out to preach and to have authority to cast out demons. And he appointed the 12, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, and James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder, and Andrew and Philip, and Bartholomew and Matthew, and Thomas and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him.
All right. Anybody want to give us the highlights of it? I think we all familiar with it.
Well, we know that's the beginning of that verse. We see that he went up on a mountain. You know, that's one of the things that we have been discussing about going up on a mountain. It's very significant in this first century Jewish culture when they talk about someone going up on a mountain, and they compare it to Moses going up on Mount Sinai. So that's one of the first things that stand out to me in this passage.
Okay.
And then I could say he summoned them to him, you know. So he wanted, and he wanted them to be with him, right? Yeah. As I reckon he has something that he had to share with them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And we use this to reference. This verse is used to describe, or it's one of the descriptions of the impact of WithMeTime. Anybody remember that reference? Getting us to get used to thinking again. I'll move in and take the lead shortly. But does anybody remember the reference in this verse or in this passage that gives a description of WithMeTime?
In this passage or other passage like you're talking about?
This is one of the few
Okay.
that actually gives the description and describes the impact of what happens in the WithMeTime.
Okay.
The rest of them highlight or give examples of having WithMeTime, for Jesus inviting his disciples in WithMeTime, but this one describes what that actually means and what happens when you do it.
I'm thinking of the verse in Acts, I think it is, where it talks about them being with him, and but also being untrained men when they saw uh, all the stuff they were doing and when they were preaching and stuff, and they said that they realized that they had being untrained men, but they had been with Jesus. So it kind of explains that um, the people they were and the things they were doing weren't because of anything natural. It was because, to me, because they had been with him.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of their. I mean, I guess it was a natural thing that happened through the, Jesus transferring his life to them.
Give us the passage. Let's go there.
Excellent. Let's see.
Is it in the book of Acts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Acts 4:13.
Acts 4:13.
You mean Acts 3:14, right?
Maybe. Might have had a little dyslexia kick in.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Never mind.
So Acts 4, you say, Bradley?
4:13.
Yeah, 4:13.
Somebody read it.
Okay, I read it. It say, now as they observe the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they was uneducated and untrained men, they was amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus.
All right. So, yeah. So this is an example. All right. It doesn't describe, the impact of what happens, but Mark 3:14 describes why this was so. Actually, the description in Mark 3:14 gives us an understanding of how this can happen. How can these men who are uneducated or untrained, of course, you know what they're referencing here is these men weren't accounted or accredited with going to Midrash under a rabbi. So they considered them untrained, But how would these men be able to be recognized as having been with Jesus when this is after the resurrection? Mark 3:14 actually describes what happened. It gives us an example of what's happening. Does anybody remember that description?
What you said, Mark 3?
Yep, in Mark 3:14.
Mark 3:14.
Yep.
You mean Luke 6:40?
There's examples in Luke 6:40, but Mark 3:14 gives us an exact description of it.
Gives us an exact description of what?
With me time.
Yeah, that's the verse we just looked at.
Yeah, I know it, but I'm looking for somebody to give me the description out of it. Does anybody remember how it describes it?
It said that they would let's see.
I'm intentionally avoiding to give too many guiding words because I'll eventually give you the answer. But when we think about with me time, this verse should be one that all of us should have a hard time losing sight of after today. You know it.
Well, he says he summoned them, and first he said they had to come to him. They came to him.
Okay.
They were with him. He sent them. He gave them authority, and
This
they
is what
cast out devils,
yeah,
demons.
this is what we're doing. You know,
They were appointed.
we're only looking for the transliterated words. We're not thinking inside of the text. You know it. When I give it to you, you're gonna hit yourself in the head and be like, "Oh, okay." Yeah.
So what is your question, though?
What description in this passage? What is the description in this passage that gives the exact example and description of what happens inside of the with me time? What is the with me time accomplishing? What word or description in this passage gives that example? All right, let me ask somebody, what happens to each individual, or what happens to the individual when they're having with me time with a rabbi?
They become like him.
They're looking at him and they're um, ultimately to model how he relates and lives his life out. So he's doing that out in front of them. And he's teaching, I'm sure, as he verbally, but a lot of the communication that they're picking up is nonverbal.
Okay. Yeah, true. All of that's true. Perfect examples.
Well, for
And
one thing, go ahead, Wayne.
no, I was just going to say in this passage, as well as Luke 10, or excuse me, Luke 6, that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach.
Yeah.
That's telling us that there is an equipping, that they might have significant outreach beyond their little group of 12. They're not a holy huddle.
Correct. And another great example, passage that gives a great example, Luke 10, I think Luke 9, Luke 10 gives examples as well, but I like the way Luke 10 described it.
Luke 10 and what verse?
I think it's 2 or 3. Let's look at it and see. You just quoted it, Judge Wayne. Gives purpose around it. He called them so they can be with him.
And then he might send them, yeah.
Preach.
You want us to read that, case?
Yes. Read verse 1. It's in verse 1. Verse 1 and 2.
Wait a minute, I don't get to it. Anybody got it? So Luke
I don't know why
10,
I thought I was sharing my screen. I apologize, man.
Luke 10. Okay, let me get to it. Luke 10 and verse 1. Yes. Okay. Luke 10 and verse 1. Now after this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them in pairs ahead of him to every city and place where he himself was going to come.
Let's go to 9. Let's go to Luke 9.
Luke 9. Wait a minute. What verse again? Luke 9 and 1.
1 and 2.
Okay. Luke 9, verse 1. And he called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over all the demons and to heal disease. He sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to perform healing. That's okay.
All right. The thing I like to use those two verses for, or those passages for, is to think about Jesus didn't go with them. They went out, but they went out as ambassadors, or as if Jesus was, or as if they were Jesus. They did things Jesus would do. And the question is, what happened in their relationship? Mark describes what happened in a relationship for that to be accomplished. And there's a description in Mark that gives the example of what happened for them to be able to do that. What's happening when they're spending this with me time with Jesus?
Are they being transformed?
Being transformed. Yes.
Modeling.
Yes, they're modeling. Yeah. But there's a Bible term that gives the example, and it's only found in Mark 3:14. And we've talked about it for years. We've talked about
Is it
John,
WK? Is it WK?
well, in Mark 3:14, we talk about WithMeTime. What have we learned?
It's transferring truth and life.
Exactly. Yeah. Truth and life transfers, but how is that accomplished?
By being with the
God.
rabbi.
Exactly. And what's happening in that process when you're with the rabbi for that to happen?
You being trained.
Yep.
And he's teaching you to be like him.
Okay.
As we said in Luke 6:40.
Don't get mad at yourself when I tell you, but somebody look up the word with me in Mark 3:14. Everybody got it?
Looks like Chris already put it in the chat.
Okay. Somebody read it to us.
So it looks like it's meta as a preposition, and it means after, with, implying change afterward, which results after an activity. So having been changed after having done something. I guess in this context, it's after having been with Jesus.
Anybody has a spiral zodiates?
That's also the root word of the Greek word for repentance.
Anybody have a spiral zodiates?
I do not.
See if I can pull it up on the screen for you.
Yeah, what I'm looking at, it just says the word is meta, M-E-T-A. It's a primary preposition denoting accompaniment. I'm just kind of scrolling down.
It's depriving us of how come I can't pull my Discovery Bible up?
The Discovery Bible doesn't have a word. It says no word.
Not well, yeah. And I'm sorry. I'm saying Discovery Bible. I mean, I'm trying to pull up my spirals, my digital spiral, so I can show it.
For the Discovery Bible, if you put it into the Greek, it'll give you it gives that definition for with.
I got you.
But they were developing a relationship with Jesus, for one thing. Yeah. You know, because they had to be with him to develop a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And then, so once they had developed that relationship, then they were prepared to go out after being with him and having a relationship with him.
When you research it and you trace it out in your Vine's dictionary, you'll trace out the word diatribo. Anybody remember that word? Nobody remember diatribo?
Oh wow, I had that word.
diatribo, diatribo. Nobody heard that word before?
I don't
Yeah,
remember
I've
that
heard.
word.
Yes, it has the meaning of it is the meaning of like be with me, rub off on. It has that type of connotation to it.
Yeah. So it's describing the closeness or in the proximity of the relationship of what actually happens when you spend time with someone, particularly a rabbi. It gives the metaphoric example of rubbing off into, or to rub through is what it actually translates to. So the character rubs through, the wisdom rubs through, the knowledge rubs through, which creates the likeness, you know. So the diatribo is what's happening in those relationships. It's the description of what's being of how the likeness is being accomplished, you know. So to rub through. Chris put it in the chat. It's a two-part word. It's a compound word, dia and tribo. It's often, used in with me or spending time, but it's what's happening when we're spending that time. It gives the example of wearing through into someone else. So when I share I was sharing my testimony to some young guys with me last night. And, I was just kind of giving them the example of who I was when I was incarcerated. But I gave them the example. And when you think about being incarcerated, you think about a lot of horrible people, a lot of bad character, bad examples, bad influence. But when I was describing them to them, the journey God took me on and the people he intentionally sent to talk to me as soon as I got off the chain gang. A guy come and introduce himself. He says, "Man, I'm Charles Young. Watch this." And I'm at at that time they called the prison the Thunderdome. So I'm at one of the worst prisons in Tennessee, called Northwest Penitentiary. And I'm talking about we walking into the pod. And as soon as I put my stuff on my bunk, he walked into the room behind me. I'm thinking like, what is this? Welcome to the penitentiary, K. But he reaches his hand out and he says, "I'm Charles Young. Watch this." He says, "I'm the man of God in the pod." Man, what is that? Like, I wasn't expecting that in prison. I'm pleased because guess what my prayer was? God, send your angel ahead of me. Bring me to the place you've prepared and keep me along the way. Mm-hmm. And the first person who greet me is a guy named Charles Young, and he introduces himself as the man of God. And we got close, and I learned from him. I watched his boldness, and I watched his sincerity. I watched how he was unashamed for the gospel, and we spent 2 years together. He got me a job. He had favor. He was working in the kitchen. And they didn't trust a lot of people, so his crew was assigned to unload the produce off the trucks, and he put me on his crew eventually, and we just spent time. So I eventually moved away from that prison, and I went to a lower security prison called Lake County. And my first day in the chapel, I'm trying to get to know the chaplain. And my first day in the chapel, a guy walk up and introduce himself, and he says, "Man, I'm Clante Thomas. I'm the teacher's aide in the barber shop. I've been over here X number of years, right?" And then I began to spend time with him, and then I go to another prison, and it's early in the morning. I sit out. I don't know anybody there. I'm at West High now, which is the prison eventually met Soup. And I'm out early in the morning, everybody doing what they do, playing dominoes and doing a lot of different things. And this guy sees me, I'm sitting down with my Bible open, and it's a lot of noise and chaos. And I'm sitting at a table or a bench, a metal bench with my Bible out, and the guy walks up to me and says, "Man, you don't see that a whole lot." He said, "How you doing?" They call me Bishop. I'm Brother Wells, Eduardo Wells. And so I began to spend time with him. My point of it is, I had bad character when I first was incarcerated, but I began to spend time with those guys. And years later, eventually, a year after I met Eduardo, Soup came into the prison. So we got a chance to spend about two and a half years from afar from him coming in. But what was happening is this process of me spending time with these guys. I look up years later, and I have a part of those guys' character in me because of the proximity and the time that I spent. And it was happening through this process called diatribo. It was a rubbing through. Character was rubbing through because we were spending time and I was asking questions. But what I was getting the opportunity to do, just like now, over the past. When I met Soup in 2009, I met Bishop Wells in 2007 or early 2008. But when I met Soup in 2009, he began to explain to me what was happening with those other guys, because those other guys didn't know anything about the term disciple making, or they didn't understand the intentionality of WithMeTime. And then I met Soup, and he walks me to Mark 3:14, and he began to explain diatribo to me. And I began to realize later is, man, I see what God was doing. He put people in my life to change my life, for that character to rub off into me through. And that's what was happening. So to understand WithMeTime, the first term we want to make sure we understand and always remember is diatribo. Diatribo. All right.
KUC, um, as you talk and as I think, um, we have, I certainly have used that whole concept, the WithMeTime. When you disciple something, or being involved in a discipling relationship, it's just not the transfer of information. That's important.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes.
But it's also being with somebody so that he begins to model before you how to live, and you want to do that, so you begin to follow. So it's truth, it's information, and it's life that's clearly been done. Yes. And as I think through my life, and as I just look at society in general, that's just not in the Christian life. I mean, if you want to be a good golfer, you hang around the guy that can hit the golf ball. If you want to be a good lawyer, a good trial lawyer, then you need to hang around somebody that knows what the heck he's doing in the courtroom. Right. And watch him and begin to follow him and ask him questions and let him teach you. So I don't think it's only in the Christian life that this is true.
Exactly. That's the old saying is, before we ever heard or knew about the word or the term disciple making, we have been discipled and making disciples all of our lives.
All our lives.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt.
Yep.
Just depends on what it was.
Yeah.
What they were like and what you were like and what they were becoming. That's so true.
Yeah, I won't tell it today because it brings tears to my eyes, but I got a horrible story of the bad example of that cost somebody else their life because they wanted to be like me because they were with me, and my character at the time rubbed off into them, but they couldn't handle what I was at the time, and it killed them. It killed them. So we can be intentional now to produce lives. So the goal now is to understand it and utilize it with intentionality, right? But diatribo is a term that if we talk about with me, we want to be familiar with, and now I guarantee you'll never forget it again. Because of the challenge and how it puzzled our mind trying to figure out what it was. John, you remember this term, right?
Which time was that, Kay?
Diatribo.
Oh yeah, I remember that term.
Yeah.
Rub off.
Yeah. But Now, what I want to do, I want us to think about, I want us to remember it, I want us to teach it, but where did it originate? Like, did it start with Jesus? Because that's what I thought at first. When I met Suit, when he was showing me all of these New Testament scriptures about it, it's like, man, Jesus was something, man. You know, but I began to reread, and I realized, and I began to see, man, that God is once again, God raised up Abraham and Sarah to create a nation that he would make his own, to make himself known to the world. And through that same culture, he began to model the strategies that we're learning to live out today, culturally. All right. Let's go to 1 Kings. Let me see. Chapter 19. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 19. Now, I'm going to give a few examples, but I'm going to give out the homework assignment again now that we kind of understand what we're looking for. But what I want to challenge us is to use the whole Bible when we try to find examples of biblical characters living out with me time. I think that's a better way to say it. All right. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 19, I think. Let's see. May start with yeah, let's for the sake of context, let's start at verse 9, and we're gonna read all the way to verse 21. How about that? Speak enough. Yes. 1 Kings chapter 19. Let's start at verse 9, and we're gonna read all the way to 21. Anybody?
Then he came there to a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God, the host of the Lord, the God of hosts, for the son of Israel, for the sons of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, tore down thine altars, and killed thy prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away." So he said, "Go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, and after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of gentle blowing. And it came when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in a mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Then he said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, torn down thine altars, and killed thy prophets with the sword, and I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said to him, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you have arrived, you shall anoint Hazael king over Aram, and Jehu the sons of Nimshi, you shall anoint king over Israel. And Elijah, the son of Shaphat of Abel Maholah, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. And it shall come about, the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall put to death. And the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elijah shall put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So he departed from there and found Elijah the son of Shaphat while he was plowing with 12 pairs of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed over to him and threw his mantle on him, and he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will go, then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" So he returned from following him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them and boiled their flesh with the implements of the oxen and gave it to the people. They ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and ministered to him.
I think we paid attention to what's happening. I think we see it now, right? But I don't think we paid attention. What do we see?
We see Elijah calling Elisha, and him burning everything he had, so he didn't have anything to go back to, so he could follow him.
Okay.
Burning his livelihood, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. He wanted to be with him. He wanted to spend time with him, to become like him. Right? And this is the with me time, he wanted to be. Yeah. And it's gonna rub off on Elijah.
See, Elijah didn't understand it yet, right? He got this, first of all, this "woe is me" song and dance, and he said, "I'm the only one left." And God kind of overlooks it and gives him some instructions, and by way of encouraging him, it's like, "Hey man, I got something important for you to do, but also, more importantly, the most important thing God had for Elijah to do is to connect with Elisha." All right, to connect with Elisha. And so I'll give more examples about that in a minute. But here's a term, it's called the law of first mention. Where do we see this term here that we become familiar with it, before? Somebody read verse 20.
And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you." And said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?"
That sounds familiar.
But it sounds like the verse that Jesus said, "Anybody putting their hand to the plow and turning back is not worthy to be my disciple."
Yeah. But think about how did the interactions with Jesus in his first calling of his disciples go?
They left everything and followed him.
Yes. And that's pretty much what Elijah is saying is, hey, you know what? Because think about the relationship here. It means it in first century Judaism, but in this time it's even deeper, that if I'm doing something for my father, that's what I'm going to do my life. It's unheard of to leave my father and go somewhere else to do something else with my life. That's just unheard of, but here it is pretty quickly. He like, Well, I'm kissing mom and dad goodbye, and I'm about to follow you. I'm about to follow you. And we know Bible history. We know he did. We know what happened after this. But this is the initiation of it. This is the beginning of it. And Elijah wasn't even familiar with it yet, because God was developing this turn. There's a lot of things that this was in the early development until it became systematic or institutional for the culture. All right. But here we see it happening. We don't necessarily no, look at 21. It says, so he returned from following him because Elijah was encouraging him, don't, and you're gonna see often how Elijah continued to try to convince Elisha not to be with him, not to pursue him. But Elisha was like, I don't care what you say. I'm pursuing life and death. All right. But the results, all right. What are some results that we know about the life of Elisha that end up happening from his diatribo with Elijah?
Mm-hmm.
He got a double portion of the Spirit
Come
when
on now.
Elisha was translated to heaven.
Mm.
And see, that's an idiom. I had a book I got to find it called Jewish Idioms.
Mm-hmm.
It had over 1,900 or 19,000, one of the two idioms. And I used to kind of look at those. But when I saw that double portion of the Spirit, it was basically an idiom to be like,
Mm-hmm.
to be one, to be like,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Elisha was saying, is I want to be like you. I want a double portion of your Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But we look at it as a super spiritual term,
Mm-hmm.
but it was simple context and it results from WithMeTime. So yeah.
Hey, Casey, it just really strikes me. It's a principle. It's interesting to see it here in the Old Testament, in that you're bringing that up. But, I know Ed Soup will say, somebody wants to be his disciple, he better follow him. He better pursue. The pursuit is on the disciple. And I can remember being told by an old dude who was a master disciple maker saying, don't chase them. Don't chase them. They got to have the want to before you can invest in them and do much with them. And that's what you see there in Elisha. I mean, he had the want to. He was pursuing him with everything he had. Great model for us.
Well, in reality, I think we see that all through the Bible.
Mm. Yeah.
You're right. You see Abraham had to leave his and God called him, say, hey, leave your family,
Mm-hmm.
And like Casey was saying, back in the first century Judaism, you wanted to be like your father, be with your father, but God called us I reckon when God called us, he said, it's almost like, I put it to you like this. When I started studying with this group 6 years ago, pretty soon nothing else made too much sense to me. I left all that. I didn't care about Grambling beating Southern. I didn't care. I didn't care about LSU beating Alabama.
Hold on there.
I watched it.
You're going too far.
I watched the game.
No, he didn't.
I watched the game,
No, he didn't.
I watched the game, but I didn't care. I'm like Paul. I consider all that stuff to be done for the relationship that I have with Christ. And I thought to develop that relationship, by looking at my rabbi on this call, who I believe have a relationship with God. So everything else becomes dumb to me. You know, I just it don't matter to me. Right? I I I sit down with people and we be talking and they be talking about stuff that don't even interest me in the least bit. But when I come on this group here, I pay strict attention because I want to learn from the rabbi. And this is my with me time with the rabbi and all his disciples. I don't know. Casey, you there?
Here, I'm listening. I'm
Well,
listening.
I'm just saying that all this other stuff, like Paul says, Paul, my status didn't matter no more. I didn't care. Like Paul was saying in Philippians, I think 3 and something. But Paul was smart now, right? Very smart and had power and everything. And he became like, hey man, all that stuff is junk to me. Don't mean nothing. But my relationship that I have with Christ Jesus. And that's the way I feel today. I have, like I say, everything else becomes second nature. That's I can do it or don't do it. But my relationship getting into this word, I had never wanted to get into this word as much as I am today. So I find myself getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to study. I never done that. But where I got that from?
Mm.
Who do I know that do that?
Mm.
Guy that I'm talking to.
Yeah.
He tell me I'm up at 3 o'clock. Now I want to be like him. I don't want to be like Mike. I want to be like Houston. And I don't went through some suffering and some pain just like he have to get here today. You know, if that's the idea, this makes sense to me now. Being like my rabbi, spending time with my rabbi. I'm through, Case.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They say no time lost, right? So no matter what kind of time it is, no time lost. Or any way you can get it. Um, let's continue to look at some examples that Elisha laid out. And the sages were wise because they took these examples and they began to package them into disciplines that we're learning today. So yeah, come on, Chris.
Okay, said I don't. This is maybe background, but before we move off of First Kings 19, I think it's interesting that where this is all taking place is on Mount Horeb, which is also Mount Sinai, and we say that the mountain is usually a place of revelation. So this is the same place, same mountain where God revealed to Moses the Torah. You see God kind of revealing himself in a different way at this time. Like before, when God appeared, the mountain looks like it's burning and it's shaking, and everybody's afraid to be about it. And in this passage we just read, it's like, God's not in the earthquake, God's not in the strong wind. It was a different interaction he had with Elijah, and it was very purposeful. It was for him to go and then find Elisha. Like you're saying, it's like it was purposeful sending him to have with me time with Elisha, to have that transference of character.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, good stuff, Chris. Excellent, excellent. Yes, yes. And there's no coincidences, right? So yeah, no coincidences. So yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll save this other statement I'll make later. But let's look at this. Let's continue to look and see what you just mentioned, Brother Wayne. It's on the disciple. It's his pursuit. Like I can't want it more than he wants it, but he has to have a want to about it. I like how he worded that, right? Let's watch Elijah's want to, right? We see it, we saw it in the beginning. This was something just he had in him. And he recognized who he can get what from. Those examples of what I shared about those men. I was in a dark place, right? When you're in prison, you're in a dark place. But God gave me light in the darkest places you can imagine being in life. All right. And I recognized that. And so I began to pursue those men. Charles Young, I began to pursue him. Clonte Thompson, I began to pursue him. At Water Wheels, I began to pursue him. And then when I met Soup, I began to continue to pursue him. And that relationship continued on 18, 19 plus years now. So those were things that was dependent on the pursuer. Look at Elisha. Let's look at Elisha. We're gonna keep reading. We can probably read all the way down. So everybody's familiar with the story, but we've looked at it for a different purpose in times past. We read it to see how he was being taken up, but we missed one of the most important truths that was being modeled in this by way of disciple making. Somebody says, about the Great Commission. You hear me say this, but like, why do you talk about this all the time, Kay? Is because it flows, the entire Bible flows from it, through it, to it, and by it. You can't get away from it. You think about the context of the Great Commission, the entire Bible flows through it, from it, to it, and by it. And here's examples. Here's examples. Who would have thought, reading about Elijah and Elisha, I see one of the most essential examples in disciple making? Who would have thought? Right? How many other people think about it that way? They don't. So yeah. So let's pay attention. Now we know what we're looking for. Somebody start at verse 1 and be prepared to be interrupted.
You talking about chapter 20?
We're in Second Kings. I'm sorry. Second Kings, chapter
Second
2.
King. Are we going to Second King now?
Yeah, let's go to Second Kings. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's go to Second Kings, chapter 2, verse 1.
Second Kings, chapter 2, verse 1.
Yeah.
And it came about when the Lord was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven. Elijah went with Elisha to Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me to Bethlehem. But Elisha, as the Lord lives, no, he said, but Elisha said, as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethlehem. The sons of the prophet who was at Bethlehem came out to Elisha and said to him, do you know that the Lord will take away your master from you? No, take away your master from over you today. And he said, yes, I know, be still.
Hold on, pause one moment. So this reference of master is symbolic for a leader, but it's where we begin to see Lord in some Old Testament or probably King James references, but basically it's a pedagogue or a teacher. When we research it deeply, so they're referencing it because they know Elisha has been learning from Elijah by doing life with Elijah. And they recognize that relationship. So everyone around them says, he's your master. Right? So we got to get out of our Western thinking about that word, right? It presents challenges, it clogs our mind. But they were just referencing someone that I respect, that I learned from, who's leading me, which eventually become known as a rabbi, over time, all right, in our culture. But just wanted to explain that, because keep reading.
Elisha said to him, this verse 4. Elisha said to Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho. But he said, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophet who was at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today? And he answered, yes, I know. Be still. Elisha said to him, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. So the two of them went on. Now 50 men of the son of the prophet went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan.
All right, pause one.
Go ahead.
Here's something else that we often overlook. All right, sons of prophets. All right, we'll see the sons of prophet here, and eventually, when we start reading about Elijah, we'll see the school of the prophet. So, you know, in Jewish history, what's being developed now is this institution of midrash, and it originated around the context of prophets, but you know, this was men who were learning to hear God, to understand God. But right here in this context, it refers to the sons of prophets. And it's talking about a group of people who had similar learning aspirations. So yeah. What we got, Chris?
I was just looking into the when we talked about the term master, when it was referring to Elijah, I looked up the word and put it in for reference.
Okay.
Adon.
All right. But from here until you start looking at the life of Elisha, pay attention to these sons of prophets, and then how it starts shifting to the school of prophets. But keep reading.
Okay, I'm going to go to verse 7. Now 50 men of the son of the prophet went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Elisha took his mantle and folded it together and struck the water, and they was divided here and there, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they crossed over, Elisha said to Elisha, ask what.
Hey, Will. Hey, y'all, do me a favor. Read to the end of the chapter. I got a work call coming in I need to grab right quick. But go ahead and read.
Well, somebody could help me, you know.
Yeah, somebody jump in, and then I'm gonna be back. I'm listening. I just need to mute so I can answer this call.
Okay.
Hey, what word do you need somebody to pick up? What verse?
Go ahead to verse 8.
10.
You're at 10?
I'm at 8.
10. No, you're at verse 10.
I'm at verse 10.
Yeah. And he said to them, because when they crossed over, he says, please, when they crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you. And Elisha said, please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. And he said, you have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so. As they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots of Israel and his horsemen. And he saw Elisha no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them into two pieces. He also took up the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and returned and stood by the banks of Jordan. He took the mantle of Elisha and that fell from him and struck the water and said, where is the Lord, the God of Elijah? And when he also had struck the waters, they were divided here and there, and Elisha crossed over. Now, when the sons of the... Okay, you ready to stop?
No, I just wanted to comment a little bit.
Go ahead.
What I did, my claim to shame is when I met Soup, I had read the Bible 5 or 6 times. Even maybe now, probably over 12 times. And I became this situational study or reader now. It's kind of hard for me to get out of 1 or 2 passages, and I'm diving deep. However, in all of my passages through the Bible, before I learned how to study, I only looked at this as spiritual stuff, miracle stuff. I never saw the actual disciplines of building into someone before, right? I only saw, I looked at this as a miracle and an example of God's, miracle power, miracle giving power to someone. And I overlooked what I actually should have been looking at. And it was really not the actions or the activities that Elisha is doing with this mantle and striking the water and all these things. But what I should have simply been looking at is his becoming like Elisha through this spending of time, and how Elisha's character and wisdom and knowledge had rubbed off into him through this exchange of living life on life. And I missed that for so many years of my life. I missed it. So I want us to pay attention to that, because we can get caught up in the whirlwind and the striking of the mantle. We look at the mantle with power. Like, I want a mantle like that so I can strike the water, right? But we don't want to get caught up in that, because I did, before. So yeah. All right. Let's see. All right, come on, Chris.
So I guess you kind of seeded the thought around the double portion of the Spirit, or forget me, it was Bradley that mentioned it, but I just looked into it real quickly, and it's again, it's not. I think we talked about just at a high level previously. It's not about like power. It's just more about inheritance.
Yes.
So let me have the rightful inheritance of the office of kind of like that, being that lead prophet.
Yeah. And it just so happened that being like Elijah was being like God's prophet, right? But it was about being like, the double portion of being like, I want to be what he is and who he had become. And we see Elisha do that, right? So we missed the example, because we think about prophetic stuff. Come on, Chris.
I just had a real quick question. Do you think, so we talked about all the other things that are happening there, the miracle bits, but that's like evidence that guy was with Elijah, and then later on we'll see Elisha doing the same thing. So it's like the tangible demonstration that kind of that double portion had been given to him, because he's doing now the same things that are visible that Elijah had done previously.
Yeah. Scholars say that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, that's where we get the term that the mantle has passed.
Yes.
See, it's not the actual item, but we see that Elisha steps right into where Elijah was, and they're using the mantle to show that. But we now in society, I don't know how many times we hear that even in a given day, that the mantle has now been passed.
That's right.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, good stuff. Yeah. stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. And all right, we'll see you, bro Wayne. Appreciate it. And I gotta slide out about 6:45, so somebody keep me on the clock. So yeah.
I got you.
Clock. All right.
So a question that I have. So these things that they was doing when they struck the water and all this was not considered as miracles or whatever you want to. Well,
Yeah.
how we call that?
Yeah, it is. I'm my example of my saying, don't get so caught up in the miracle happen that we miss the means of transferring the discipline and the simple engagement process of transferring truth and life. Because we see the miracles. I'm not dismissing the miracles. That's not what I meant.
Okay.
You know, they happen, they are true, they are real, but we miss the engagement piece of what actually happened through life on life. You know, because we get so caught up in seeing the miracles. That's all we use that passage for, is to highlight the miracles that happen. So yeah. All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, before we go
Yeah,
on,
Elisha.
go ahead, Jim.
Elisha did not want the miracles as much as he wanted to be like Elijah.
Come on now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was the deal. Yeah, Elijah was able to part the waters, but Elisha continues to communicate. He wants to be like Elijah. Now that means also he'll be able to part the water, but that wasn't that. This passage doesn't show that that's the priority. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, I want that mantle so I can have a miracle. It was, I want to be like Elisha.
Look at what he says in verse 14. Somebody read verse 14.
And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and struck the waters and said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And when he had also had struck the waters, they were divided here and there, and Elisha crossed over.
That's what he wanted. it was about watching Elijah's relationship with God. So I want to be like him because I've seen how he relates to God and God relates to him. That's what I want. However, we think it was only in the relationship of prophets, but it was just about his desire to be with God as Elijah was one with God. So we see that example. All right. That's what Elisha wanted, you know. So yeah. And we miss it, you know. And before we move on, what we also see is Elisha modeling something. Like, look at the fervence, the determination and the refusal of separation, right? Like we can use that as life circumstances that happen all the time that prevents us from spending with me time with someone. But Elisha refused them all. Think about it. Everybody tried to discourage him, even Elijah. It's like, no, God got something for me to do. You know, I better go over here. I can do this by myself, so stay here. Elisha like, I vow to God, just as the Lord lives, I will not be with you. You know, I'm going. And he went and he pursued. And then here go the sons of prophets. Don't you know the Lord taking your master from you today? He was like, okay, and what? Yes, I know, you know, but he refused to separate, but he refused to give up his with me time, and God honored that. So he's modeling something. He's modeling the determination in the pursuit, the determination inside of the pursuit, right? Because it ain't gonna happen without sacrifice. You know, it ain't gonna happen without giving up something. It ain't gonna happen without challenges and obstacles. All right, but Elisha refused. So that's a great example in those, you know, first set of verses. So yeah.
So in other words, go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
Well, Well, I know you got the lead, so I need you to go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, what occurs to me is my question becomes for me, who am I pursuing it that way?
That's right.
It's like you always want somebody to pursue you, because that's a feel good thing, so to speak. Pardon me for using that language. Um, but the issue is, who am I pursuing? And when you get on up to my age, you get fewer, but you need them. I don't care where you are in your maturing process. The only person I knew who had outlived everybody was old Jim Downing, and he was at 96, 98 when I met him. Um, but that's my question. What do you think about that, KUC?
Oh yeah.
And as far like I my view had been when I was 45 or so, I've been discipled, I got all that. It was always me looking back and having friends who were, but not looking to a dude who was 10, 15 years older than me that I could follow and pursue.
No, that's right. That's good.
Do you
And
do you ever have somebody you're not pursuing? That's an interesting
Yeah,
question.
there you go, man. That's the question, isn't it?
now, Soup and I were talking, and I talked to him about, some of my challenges, right? As I said, Soup, man, God has allowed Zena and I to lead some mission trips, and my resources are limited, and I'm watching your schedule, and I want to go out of the country with you here and there. Fortunately, last year I was able to do that. But I said a lot of those times it conflict because if I go with you, then the places that's different that God has allowed me relationships with, I can't go, and then I don't get a chance to spend time with my disciples.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I won't let you go with me. He says, if that's the challenge, then we already know the decision you got to make.
Mm-hmm.
We spend countless of time together. We get our time in. He said, but if it's a situation like that, and I know it, I wouldn't let you go. So yeah, because it doesn't eliminate ever having with me time, but also you got to think about what's being created behind as well in that maturation process, right? So yeah. And then I still find time to be with him, but just one example, in that as well is just keeping that in mind. But I say this also, Brother Herb has died, right? So Soup in turn pursues his mature disciples. He often asks those same questions he asked Brother Herb, and it's humbling, right? But I understand and recognize what's happening because it's the heart of pursuit that's in him. Although the disciple maker he pursued for 30 plus years is no longer physically present, pursuing is still a part of who he is. Right. So yeah, so it's always a part of who we are. I think to your statement, Bro Wayne. So yeah.
Gotta go.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate it, man. Love you, man. Yeah. All right. So yeah. But again, man, I can't tell you how many times I've read this passage and overlooked the real truths in it. Right?
Yeah.
Because I took it for granted, but now I'm seeing it, watch what happens. Watch what happens. All right. We see Elisha present to see the Lord take him up. But the truth of the matter is, if his heart or his heart of pursuit wasn't as deep and determined as it was, he wouldn't have been present. Therefore, he wouldn't have been there to pick up the mountain. So it's physically picking up the mantle, but it's spiritually about the pursuit of the individual's heart to receive what God wants to build in us. So it's about the building process and the truth transference than it is about the actual mantle itself. It's a metaphor inside of a real situation, you know. So allegoric situation, but there's a lot of truths inside of it as well. So yeah. Now the question becomes, I'll say it now before I say it later. I wanted to say it and jump off so I can challenge you guys. But where's your heart of pursuit? That's the question. God, where is my heart of pursuit? You know, I should be asking for a double portion of Elisha's heart of pursuit. You know, so we got to ask ourselves, where is our heart of pursuit? You know, because this is my deal. Is, you know, we don't want the chain link to break with us, right? But that's what's at stake. We'll look at some other examples next week of Moses and Joshua, and we'll see that that's part of the homework. So let's continue on. I'll go ahead and give it again, but let's continue to find passages that model these types of examples that we're looking at with Elijah and Elisha. Come on, bro, Rob.
Yeah, could you help me with something that's bothered me a long time? He was pursuing Elijah, and 3 times Elijah said, "Look, you stay here, and I got to go do something." And 3 times he said, "No, I'm not going to stay here." And it's like, okay, is he being awarded for his um disobedience? I didn't follow the. You didn't do what I said, so you can't be my disciples. What I would typically think would happen, but he didn't do what he was told, and yet he was rewarded for that not doing it.
Yeah.
It
So,
just doesn't add up.
Yeah. So I'll say it with a soft joke. As a disciple maker, I don't know everything. I'm not always right. All right. The other piece of it is it's not about doing what you're told. It's about the pursuit of a relationship for the experience or the experiential learning process. So although he was given instructions, it wasn't about being told to do something. So once again, I see and experience even from the beginning, God set us up. Remember, Elijah didn't even understand what was happening when he first met Elisha. He kind of learned over time as it was modeled, but he still never fully understood it. He wasn't necessarily intentional because God was building out this process for you and I to model, right? So early on, I'll softly say, I don't know if Elijah fully understand what God was doing with Elisha with him, right? But it happened over time where God showed us the results of what Elisha did. So this is my statement. I'll go ahead and give it away. We often highlight Moses as one of the most important characters in the Bible. But I beg to differ in some ways, because if it wasn't for Joshua, there would be no promised land conquest. Think about that. So Joshua's pursuit of Moses was just as important as Moses himself, just like Elisha's pursuit of Elijah was just as important as Elijah himself. Now, scholars also say this about Elisha and Elijah. He asked for a double portion of the Spirit. Now, you do this on your own. If you go read the miracles that Elijah performed, you would see the miracles Elisha performed are times 2. So you see Elijah perform miracles, the Bible shows us, maybe more, but it's the ones the Bible narrates. And you go and read the ones the Bible narrates that Elisha performs. Elisha performed double the miracles that Elijah performed. So did he receive a double portion? Yes. And I don't even necessarily know that's the most important piece of it is, but it shows how significant the pursuer is. And what that shows me is the refusal to be the broken link. I don't want to be the broken link. I don't let that fall on me. Yeah. Does that make sense, Rob?
It does. I just wanted to point out, if you tell me not to show up on this call 3 times and I keep coming, just remember.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff. Don't listen. At that time, I don't know everything. Yeah. Come on, Jeff.
Oh, I'm just. You want me to keep reading?
I thought you had a wise saying.
Well, no, I just. But what you are saying, it seems to be. We see it all over the place. We see it with Naomi and Ruth. We see it with Jacob wrestling with God.
Yes.
There is this idea that the pursuit of God is so strong that that it does look like what Robert said. It looks like disobedience, but it really is just God wants us to have a passion to pursue Him,
That's
like
right.
nothing else.
That's
and
right.
that passion means that we will barter, negotiate, strive, argue, and do whatever it is to have more of Him.
That's right. Yeah. No, good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the model. That's what we miss here. You know, remember there's things that Jesus did, and then there's things Jesus do, and there's things we do. So some of these miracles Elijah and Elisha are performing, we may never do in our lifetime, but we have to model what they're modeling that we can do. Come on, Chris.
Hey, Case, yeah, this may be total background noise, but I was just thinking as we're talking through the different places, and as Robert mentioned, the 3 different times where Elisha is being encouraged by Elijah not to go with him. He sits at Bethel, then Jericho, then the Jordan. I was just thinking what you were saying about Joshua and Moses, that happened across the Jordan where that transfer takes place. And that's where they go and they cross the Jordan first. And that's where then Elijah and Elisha have that transference. The mantle gets transferred across the Jordan. Then he comes back over.
I hadn't paid attention. Good stuff, Chris. Exactly right. I hadn't paid attention to that. So yeah, exactly. So again, there's no coincidences, but God is showing us deeper that He's modeling something to you and I that we often overlook in our reading and our studies. So yeah. And there's similar relationships like this. You know, you just name a few, Jeff, where that with me time becomes important. You know, and the results of it is undeniable. You know, the results of it is undeniable.
It seems as though we've always thought that this scientific process called cloning is something that the godless scientists of our day have come up with, but God has been promoting cloning for a long time.
A long time. He did it with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you know, but because of the family context, it's almost as if we miss the modeling example for us. And like, of course, Isaac is going to pursue Abraham. And of course, Jacob is going to pursue Isaac. So we miss it, but God was setting that example as well, you know. So yeah. But now we see what people outside of the context of, you know, blood relationships with Moses and Joshua and Elisha and Elijah. You know, now we see, you know, the truth in it. and we see and recognize us having the ability to live it out as well. So yeah. So yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah. Good stuff. All right. Yeah, let's keep reading. Let me see. Was there something else here? Probably better hold up before we move on, because 5 minutes is gonna come by quickly. Yeah, but I think we've went far enough to see the example of what happened between Elijah and Elisha. Let me see if I got anything else in my notes.
Well, the Mark 3:14, and what we've been talking about, we've been emphasizing how the disciple has the hunger and desire. But in the 3:14, when Jesus says he appointed 12, first of all, that word means to bind together, as though you were strapping it together. And then he says to be with him so that they could be sent out to preach. The intention of the rabbi is significant in Mark 3:14. He wasn't just picking the best dudes out of the group. His intention was not so much, it was a with me, but the with me was for a fruit of being able that they could do likewise.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
KU, it seems like to me, God is making things clear for us, right? Because even Jesus was returning back to heaven, I think he said, what I have done, y'all will do more. Talking about his disciples, And so, in other words, like you have said to me, what you have done, you want me to do more, right? The pattern can continue. When I get somebody, I want them to do more than me, right? So this thing just gets stronger and stronger as we go, to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Come on, bro, Rick. I see you.
One of the things that really stood out to me today is that Elisha, uh, when it came time for him to pursue, uh, he kissed his parents, and the Bible just said hurriedly he ran and made that happen. But in I think it's Matthew 8:21, one of the Jesus disciples said, "Let me first bury my father," which I know is an idiom. And Jesus has a response to that. And it just reminded me of what Judge was saying when it comes to pursuit, that it needs to be both ways.
Yeah, yeah. In Jewish culture, it's deeper than that, too. Because in Jewish culture, a burial, the father wasn't dead. It was burial
Yes.
preparation before his death. So basically, he was talking about an undetermined amount of time.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. So yeah. But one last statement here, gentlemen. Go ahead and read verse 15, Jeff.
All right. Second Kings 2, verse 15, and it says, "Now, when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposed him, saw him, they said, 'The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha.' And they came to meet him, and they bowed themselves to the ground before him."
You know what this reminds me of? Acts 4:13. Yeah. Anybody tell me why?
They recognized that Elisha had been with Elijah.
Simple and plain. Yes, sir. Exactly. We miss it because we think about the statement, the spirit of Elijah rests on him. So we thinking about something super spiritual and supernatural. We miss the simplicity of, man, it was just recognizing that they had spent time together. And he had the character, the wisdom, and the knowledge of Elijah. That's what they meant. You know, that's what they recognized. They saw Elijah's influence in Elisha, and it was so evident that they reverenced him and respected him in the same way they reverenced and respected Elijah. Simple and plain. So yeah. That's the epitome of with me time. All right. And with that said, gentlemen, I gotta skedaddle.
Homework.
So again, we see the examples now. Let's go back now and find other examples that we see modeling with me time in scripture. All right. So now we got a better understanding of it. And then we'll come back. You gave some examples, Ruth and Naomi. There's others. So let's do that. And then we'll come back together next week. How about that? All right. We'll see y'all. Y'all be blessed.
See y'all next week. Love you guys.
Thank you, Kate. Be blessed, man.